They're historic low. They're going to go up. So we're paying $235 billion in interest right now to service this $15 trillion debt. Within 10 years, think about this fact. Within 10 years, on the spending path we're on, and interest rates just go up modestly, we will go from spending $235 billion to spending more in interest than we currently spend on national defense. We will approach $1 trillion within 10 years. Which begs the obvious question, how do you sustain that? And the answer is you can't. It will collapse. And so this is as Admiral Mullen, the head of the Joint Chiefs, has said, this is the biggest threat to national security there is. Here's a military guy saying the biggest threat to national security is the debt and fiscal problems we're facing. So we have got to get this, and it goes back. It goes back to what I said earlier. To be the world's superpower in the military context, you have to first be the economic superpower. You can't be the economic superpower if you don't embrace the right kind of values, the values that made us great in the first place. And we got to keep that in mind. There are certain fundamental principles that are so important that truly, when you look at it all, what makes us great is those basic values. And I will stop here. And I know I've said that twice, but I mean it this time. Quick story though. How many remember? I love sharing this story because it captures the values that make America special. How many remember the story of Scott O'Grady when he shot down over Bosnia? Remember that story? Made a movie of this guy's experience. Fascinating. What 29-year-old guy had to survive, hiding from the bad guys, using his training, was ultimately rescued, brought to safety. Mics were put in front of him just like this at a podium. Press wanted to hear what this young man had to say. He said 3 things. I'm paraphrasing, but he said basically 3 things. He said, first of all, I want to thank God because it's a miracle I'm standing here today. I mean, he got the fundamental, this fact that, that faith has always been part of the American experience. The founders knew this, and we can never forget that. Second thing he said was this. He says, I want to, and I'm definitely paraphrasing, but he said something to this effect. He said, I want to thank my family. He said, because it was while I was out there that I thought about them. I knew they were thinking and praying for me. Knowing they were doing all that helped motivate me to do what I had to do to make it. He said, I really want to thank my family. And I thought, you know, this guy's figured. The key, I tell folks a lot, the first institution the good Lord put together wasn't the church, wasn't the state, it was the family. And the strength of that institution ultimately determines the strength of our entire culture. You know, Polly and I, as John mentioned, we have 4 kids. And one of the things, our kids are now 24, 22, 19, and 18. And one of the things we've learned over the years is the older they got, the more we appreciated our parents. It's sort of funny how that works, isn't it? You don't always appreciate your mom and dad when you're 18, but when you get a little older and have kids of your own, suddenly you're like, wow, they weren't so dumb after all, right? But Mark, do you ever remember Mark Twain's line? He said, Mark Twain said that, he talked about how his relationship with his dad evolved over time, and he said, when I was 10, my dad knew everything. When I was 20, he didn't know much of anything. And now that I'm 30, I'm surprised at how much he's learned in 10 years. That's kind of the way it works. But that family, and Frank, this is something, I think sometimes policymakers forget this. We should ask a fundamental question. Does it benefit families? Does it help moms and dads keep more of their money? Does it help them have more control of their kids' education? You ask those questions, you typically will arrive at the right answer when you're thinking about public policy. And it's so important. And then finally, when he referenced, the third thing that Scott O'Grady said was, I want to thank the guys who come to save me. They're the heroes. And I thought, you know what? When he referenced the military, when he referenced the guys who put their lives on the line to come save him, he was getting at the word we most associate with America, and that's freedom. I mean, because you think about our country, this is something unique to America. Militaries throughout most of history and in most countries stood for tyranny and oppression, but not in the United States of America. Our military has always represented freedom, and not just for Americans, but for countless number of people around the planet. And I thought, he said it, faith, family, and freedom. And so when we're thinking about doing the right things policy-wise in an economic sense, we also have to be willing to stand up and say there are certain values that undergird it all and make us the great nation that we are. And if we lose those, we won't be the greatest in the future, and our kids and our grandkids won't get to experience this wonderful experiment of freedom we call America. My coach in high school, super guy, passed away 2 years ago. He was the toughest teacher in our school. We taught chemistry and physics. And he was, I think, the toughest wrestling coach in the whole darn state. Super guy. One of these guys that every single kid in the school looked up to. He was just that kind of teacher, that kind of coach. And every day, and this is not an exaggeration, every single day he talked about discipline. He said, Jordan, you want to do well in my class? This is chemistry. This is not health class. This is chemistry class. You want to do well in my class? You better be disciplined about preparing. You better be disciplined about doing the reading the night before. You better be disciplined about participating in class. And in the wrestling room, oh my goodness, I can still remember, he said self-discipline. Self-discipline is the most important character quality necessary to accomplish anything of meaning or significance every day. Self-discipline. I was like, but that guy, shut up. He's driving me crazy. Because he sounded just like my dad. And you get enough at home, and you get it from your coach. But he had a great definition. It hangs in our wrestling room today. My brother's a coach at our high school. It hangs in the room, and it says, discipline is doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. And you know what that meant? It meant doing it coach's way when you'd rather do it your way. It meant doing things the right way when you'd rather do them the convenient way. And it's the word that we most need in America today. It's always been there. That character quality has always been there. It was there in 1776. And every time it's been tough, it's been there. But it's what we need today if we're going to continue to be the greatest country in the world. And I know the folks in this room understand it. The people who were honored tonight understand it. But we all have to do our part. And the great thing about Americans is we've always been willing to get off the sidelines and get in the game. Never been content to hang out in the shadows, hang out in the twilight. We always have said we will step in the game and we will make a difference. And that's the kind of moment we face today. We truly do. And I'm confident we're all going to do that and make sure this country remains the greatest nation in history. Did I make the 10 minutes? John, quiet?
You can have all that.
Well, I got time for a few questions if you want to fire away, and then I'll get out of your hair and let you finish up your evening. Your chance to yell at Congressman. I tried to keep it under the time. I apologize. No one? Yes, sir.
Do you feel that that Herman Cain has peaked too soon, and if not, is he truly a viable candidate?
Look, I'm not an expert in presidential politics. I think he is a viable candidate. Obviously, he's near the top in the Republican primary with Republican primary voters. But you don't. Let's just be honest. You don't get you don't get either the major party's nomination by winning in a national poll. You get it by winning in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. So he's got to demonstrate an ability to put together an organization. But what's the old fundamentals of politics? To win a campaign, you need a good candidate, you need money, and you need a good organization. And we got a good candidate, obviously, in Mr. Cain. That's been demonstrated. But we'll see what he can do on the organization and the money side. My position is I'm for the Republican today, whoever that happens to be. I don't know if I'm going to endorse one of the individuals or not, but I think you can. And we're at a unique time in American politics. I mean, who thought you'd see what happened? We have had now 3 elections in a row where it was basically get rid of the people in control. You know, we said well, we're going to get rid of throughout the House Republicans and throughout the Republicans in Congress in 06. In 08, we said we're getting rid of the making sure that we're throwing out the Republican president. And then in 10, we shifted it back, and Republicans are back in control of the House. So the voters are like, we're fed up with you guys, and appropriately so. Appropriately so. We got to do a lot better, I think, in Washington. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Do you believe there's any chance that the super committee can come to a proposal to be accepted by both sides?
Good question. The Joint Select Committee, better known as the Super Committee, I have problems with it on a fundamental level. I mean, the Super Committee is supposed to be United States Congress, not supposed to be some 12 Super Committee. But we'll see. I mean, some days I'm like, there's no chance they're going to reach an agreement, and then other days I'm thinking there's a slim chance they're going to reach an agreement. We will see. My biggest concern, I'll be just honest with you, is that they'll want to raise taxes, and it is just absolutely the wrong thing to do. You do not look. The numbers are so bad. I gave you just a couple: the 15 to 1-to-1, and the interest payments and how they're going to go up. This year we spent $3.6 trillion. We only took in 2.3, so we're in a $1.3 trillion deficit, annual deficit. So the numbers are so bad. You cannot ultimately address the situation unless you have growth. You got to have a growing economy. You got to cut, but you can't cut your way out of this. You got to reduce spending and you got to grow. Raising taxes is not conducive to economic growth. Now, it's just a fact. So I'm nervous that they might go that direction. All right, I'll take one more, and then I'll be around for a few minutes if you want. Last chance. What? Yes, yes.
What is your opinion on gainful employment with the student loans and Department of Education?
I was never for the stinking government taking over all the student loans in the first place. This is just ridiculous. That they actually, how did they say? They actually talked about how it was going to save. Well, I debated this in the budget committee last term, and totally opposed to it. they actually talked about how this was going to save the taxpayer. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And to tell me one thing, tell me, with the exception of the military, tell me one thing the federal government does well. You know, now where we guarantee we can take over this. And look at all the things that, for those of you in banking, look at all the HAMP program, the HARP program, all the home affordability modification plans, all these different programs. They never even helped the people they were designed to help. In fact, I would argue they made it worse for people who had their homes underwater and were in a tough situation. I think they made it worse for them, and they gave them a false hope and everything else. So it doesn't work. It's back to this values thing. The market, as you all know, the market does it 1,000 times better than the government can. And we have now got into this unfortunate situation, which Wall Street Journal has called crony capitalism, where the government's picking winners and losers. They're picking, and most of the time they pick losers, like the Solyndra case, if you follow that, and a whole is bad. It just is. Let the market work. Let the market work. So I know this is an audience who gets that. So thank you all. God bless you. It's been great to be with you.